Kick it.
Ahoy mateys, and welcome to This Week in Nickelodeon History. I'm your captain, Captain Eric, and on this episode we're going to celebrate some Nickelodeon anniversaries in between the times of June 26th to July 2nd. This week we are celebrating the 36th anniversary of Nick at Nite, which debuted on July 1st, 1985. I don't know about you, but Nick at Nite has been a wonderful welcome to my home since I was a kid. I always enjoyed the older programming, as my mom was very early to show me some of her favorite shows, or even shows she thought I would enjoy, like The Munsters. I really have fond memories of watching Nick at Nite, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the George Lopez show we've mentioned a few times on the show here as an in-joke, waking up at 3 in the morning and hearing a Tequila just playing in the background. Full House, and then eventually shows like Friends would come along. And Nick at Nite has been a staple on Nickelodeon, and I know there's a lot of love out there for the classic content, and I do think there should always be a place for it somewhere on Nickelodeon's programming, but I do feel like, at least for the first 2 hours of Nick at Nite, there could be room for so much more original content there that could still bring back a nostalgic Nickelodeon crowd. They're always trying to appease those millennial Nickelodeon fans like myself, but I do think there's that crossover, that the way Adult Swim does things over on Cartoon Network. I think you can find that in a Nickelodeon sense around that time frame, but I then still will always say in those early morning parts of Nickelodeon should always be reserved for any classic shows that have been were like popular a couple decades earlier, and those shows should always have a place on Nick at Nite. Now, I actually own a piece of Nick at Nite history. Not a well-known piece, but it was actually a cool thing I came across a couple of years ago, just perusing Facebook Marketplace, and somebody was selling a Nickelodeon Cookie Jar, because I thought, you know what? I want to kind of start a Nickelodeon Cookie Jar collection. There's a few decent designs out there, and it was this TV set cookie jar on one side, and it had a bite of a cookie, an orange cookie that had the Nickelodeon logo on it, and on the other side, it was an actual TV with Nick at Nite's logo on it. Turns out that it is in fact a cookie jar that they only made for the 1993 season and were given out for employees of Nickelodeon and their other business partners. Only 4,000 made in 1993. So this cookie jar does come with a certificate of authenticity straight from Nickelodeon, and I'm not going to reveal any sort of pricing I've paid for it, but it's just an absolutely cool piece of Nick at Nite history that I happen to own here. So I'll make sure to post a picture of it for the socials. But yeah, if you are a fan of Nick at Nite, if you have any fond memories of Nick at Nite, please let me know in the YouTube comment section for this video upload. And if you have any shows that you fondly remember at Nick at Nite, if you have any like favorites that may have been on for a short period of time and then left the network too soon, or do you have any shows that you expect to see in the Nick at Nite lineup in the future, let me know. I would certainly love to know what your thoughts are on that. Both 29 and 28 years ago, respectively, on July 11th, we had the debut and finish of Mark Weiner's Weinerville. The show was created by Mark Weiner and ran for 2 seasons of 68 episodes. One of the most inventive early Nickelodeon shows. It was a puppet show, but it's a puppet show that you've never really seen before. You see, Mark Weiner is an interesting guy, and the way he handles puppetry is unlike anything you've seen before. I mean, the man wants to experiment with what you can do with puppets and what you're able to do with them in a comedic sense. And from what I've seen from him and his work, I'm just always impressed as to what he's trying to do. And Weinerville is just one of those wacky early Nickelodeon shows that I have fond memories of watching. And beyond the show, he also helped celebrate Nick's New Year with a live New Year's performance that rivaled Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve in both 1993 and 1994 respectively. And that kind of stuff I wish they just continued doing, because Nickelodeon would have had my attention, especially if they were pulling out Mark Weiner to pull some of his puppets and some of his characters out onto the live stage. Characters like Dottie, Baby Jeffrey, Big Pops, Schnitzel, just such a wide variety of characters. And if you have no idea what Weinerville is, if this is the first time you are hearing about a show called Weinerville, do yourself a favor and look it up. And also look up any of the other puppetry work done by Mark Weiner. I especially have to shout out his appearance on the Jim Henson Hour. He had Jim Henson had a primetime show that wasn't the Muppet Show. It still had Kermit, but it had a few other characters, and Mark Weiner appeared on one episode, and it's one of my favorite highlights of that entire show. So shout out to Mark Weiner, shout out to Weinerville. If you're a fan of that show, if you have any favorite characters, if you have any favorite quotes, I would love to hear them. Let yourself be known if you are a fan of Weinerville. 11 years ago, on June 27th, 2011, the revived Winx Club premiered on Nickelodeon. Created by Igneo Straffi, the show has ran for 8 seasons and 208 episodes, plus 4-hour-long specials, and I think a whole multitude of other movies that have come out of the Winx Club universe. Just a massively popular series that eventually made its way onto Nickelodeon before then creating a bunch of new stories and characters for more Winx Club fans to follow. So I hope the fans were happy with the transition of wherever it was over to Nickelodeon. I hope that transition was met positively in the fan base. Also taking place 11 years ago, on July 1st, 2011, we had the premiere of Bucket and Skinner's Epic Adventures. Created by Boyce Buglari and Jamie McLaughlin, the show ran for 1 season of 26 episodes. 9 years ago, on July 1st, 2013, Awesomeness TV premiered on Nickelodeon. Created by Brian Robbins, who is the current president and CEO of Paramount Pictures and Nickelodeon. The show ran for 2 seasons of 40 episodes. And last but certainly not least, 6 years ago on June 29th, 2016, we had the final episode of Kung Fu Panda Legends of Awesomeness. The show was developed for the screen by Peter Hastings and ran for 3 seasons of 80 episodes. And I'm a big fan of the Kung Fu Panda trilogy of films, and I've seen a few episodes of Legends of Awesomeness, and I gotta say, it's a pretty faithful continuation of the story. If you are a fan of the movies, and if you're of a younger mind, or, if you have kids, this is an absolutely wonderful show. It does continue the voices of Lucy Liu and James Hong, who continue voicing their characters from the main series. But of course, we are missing Jack Black here. But I will give credit where credit's due. Mick Winger, who takes over the role of Poe, does a pretty respectable job with the character. I mean, even from the opening theme, you couldn't really be convinced that it isn't Jack Black. Maybe for some people something's off, but I don't know. He gets it close enough that I could be fooled by it. Now, of course, Jack Black is going to be returning as Poe for Netflix's Kung Fu Panda: The Dragon Knight, another show, but that show is actually returning Peter Hastings to the world of Kung Fu Panda, who is also developing the Dragon Knight. So if you are a fan of Legends of Awesomeness and you'd love to see more of the episodic stories of the Kung Fu Panda, you can look forward to the Dragon Knight at some point on Netflix in 2022. But for the meantime, Legends of Awesomeness is absolutely worth your time. If you're a fan of the films, I have to be honest with you, this is one of the better TV shows that DreamWorks put out as far as a continuation for their films. It's this, and then I would say number 2 to that, The Penguins of Madagascar. And that is going to be it for this week in Nickelodeon history. But before we go, I got to give you my top 5, and I thought it'd be most appropriate for this week, since we celebrated the 36th anniversary of Nick at Night, to give you not just my top 5 Nick at Night shows, but specifically these would be the top 5 Nick at Night shows that I would stop channel surfing for. If I was channel surfing and one of these top 5 shows came up, I would most likely stop, unless I really wasn't in the mood for them. But this is the list for Nick at Night classics here. Number 5, and this is a classic one, I mean, they're all technically classics, so I'm not going to say that for each one. But for number 5 here, I'm talking about Sanford and Son, the classic show developed by Norman Lear and starring Red Fox and Demond Wilson. I absolutely love Sanford and Son, and let me tell you, if you've never seen the show, I have no doubt to say that the sass that comes out of Red Fox is enough to make anybody chuckle. And he's the sole reason why I fell in love with this show. Sassy older people tend to get my attention in some of these comedies. It's why I love Estelle Getty so much in the Golden Girls. But number 4 is probably as classic of a show as you can hope to imagine getting on Nick at Night. And you would think like, wow, really? You would stop for this? Like, well, you know what? When it comes to fond memories of Nick at Night, you don't get any fonder without talking about the classic I Love Lucy, starring Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. This is one of the greatest television shows of all time, and it came out decades ago, back on October 15th, 1951. 71 years ago this show came out, and it's still a quality program. Like, you can still like watch it. It's very entertaining. I think it still holds up. I mean, I've watched an episode here or there in the last year, and made me laugh, and made me more impressed that they were producing a show like this all the way back then, that it could be this good. And I stand by it. I really like I Love Lucy. I enjoy it. But it is number 4 on my list, which means that there are 3 other shows that I would say would anchor me more to Nick at Night if they were on than I Love Lucy. Number 3 being the classic Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, one of my early 90s favorites. I mean, this was a show that I grew up with as a kid, so then it kind of gives purpose to me watching Nick at Night. Like, ooh, get to watch that again. The show was created by Andy and Susan Borowitz and stars Will Smith as the titular Fresh Prince. It ran for 6 seasons of 148 episodes. Hold on, did I give credit to I Love Lucy and how long that show went on for? I don't think I did. 6 seasons of I Love Lucy, including 180 episodes, which is a jaw-dropping amount when you think about it. That's a lot of I Love Lucy. But back to the Fresh Prince here. 6 seasons, 148 episodes. One of my favorite sitcoms in the history of television, and just as a comedy, completely still stands up above the rest 30 years later. Just still one of the best sitcoms to ever exist. But you know what? I do have some sentimental value for these next 2 here. In terms of my favorite sitcom from beginning to end out of all of these shows, I would say The Fresh Prince would be number 1. Number 2, though, on this list of shows that I would stop to watch Nick at Night for, can't forget the classic Full House, which was created by Jeff Franklin, ran for 8 seasons of 192 episodes. How could you be so close to 200 and just, you're 8 shy? Just get another 8 stories in there. But for me, I don't think any other show can become more nostalgic about the early 90s than Full House. I don't know, just hearing that theme song instantly brings back early 90s feelings. It's up there with the Rugrats in terms of just a theme song that'll elicit those feelings just by audio means. I love Full House. I know it's a hokey kind of show. It's a little schlocky, but it really helps that a lot of the characters are very interesting and do develop over time, and you get to be a part of this family and watch their struggles and see their wins, see their lows, but then get to be there to see those moments that, honestly, when Danny Tanner would sit down next to DJ or Stephanie, and he would have that one-to-one. Those are very calming moments for me. I have a lot of love for Bob Saget, his contributions to the world of comedy, and of course the work he left on Full House and America's Funniest Home Videos. It's a very special love I have for Bob Saget because of those early years of my childhood and his presence in my home. And in his portrayal of Danny Tanner, as corny as that character can be, really helped a lot of kids out there, me included, during their early years their adolescence. So I just have a lot of love for Full House as a property. But, you know, comparing it like the entire run to other shows, there's certainly seasons I'm not as fond of. Those early ones, even, I'm not as fond of. There's like a great, I think like season 3 to like 6 is when it really hits its stride. But it wasn't number 1 on my list. And you got to imagine, well, you're so fond about Full House and Fresh Prince. What could possibly be number 1? And I think it's one I already mentioned earlier in the episode here. But my number 1 show that I would stop Nick at Nite for is The Munsters. The Munsters, which aired from... This is not its original airing. This is when it aired on Nick at Nite. It first aired on June 30th, 1995 until August 3rd, 2002. The show was originally made from September 24th, 1964, and ran for 2 seasons of 70 episodes, ending on May 12th, 1966. It was created by Alan Burns and Chris Hayward, and is just my absolute most nostalgic property associated with Nick at Nite, because there was a time as a kid where Monday nights were known as Munster Mondays. And watching the Munsters with my mom was a special event. It was something to look forward to. Monday nights have always been special to me, because even if it wasn't associated with Monday Night Raw, it was then the night that new episodes of Prison Break would air on Fox, and then I'd get back into wrestling and Monday nights would become special again. But going back to my very early years, Monday nights were really special, because it meant no matter what was going on in the world, no matter what was going on in my life, at school, any sort of stress that was happening, there was a chance to just hang out with my mom and watch the Munsters. And you know what? That show is one of the most enjoyable sitcoms I've ever watched. I absolutely adore every single actor and character on this show. And if you've never watched it, please do yourself a favor and go down the pipe and watch some classic Munsters episodes. I don't even know where it's airing right now, but wherever it's airing, it's worth the price to just go and watch every single episode. If nothing else, you will fall in love with Fred Gwynn's portrayal of Herman Munster, just this sympathetic oaf of a man, this Frankenstein's monster who's just trying to make it in the world and just has such a naive presence around him. He's kind of like a kid. But I absolutely adore Al Lewis as Grandpa Munster. Absolutely one of my favorite characters in television history. If I ever made a top 5 characters in television history that I love, I think Grandpa Munster might make the top 5, if not the top 10. He might be up there with Herman, but I have to also give credit to Yvonne DiCarlo as Lily Munster. Just the whole cast is wonderful. I love that show, and I'm excited to see Rob Zombie's upcoming adaptation of the Munsters, because from all accounts, from everything that he has showed, the man is clearly a Munsters fan and is making this movie from the bottom of his heart. And from one Munsters fan to another, I am looking forward to that project. So that is going to be this week in Nickelodeon history. My name is Captain Eric, and you can reach me at nickelodeonhistory@gmail.com, where you can send in your questions and comments that I can read out here on the show. You can follow me on Twitter at I'm Ready Podcast and on Instagram at SpongeBob Podcast. Please check out my other podcast, I'm Ready, a SpongePod Squarecast, dropping mostly every Wednesday. And don't forget to subscribe to the Captain Eric YouTube channel, where you can also hit that bell for notifications whenever the Captain puts something out. You can also purchase new and updated merch at the Redbubble link, either in the podcast description or in the link from any of my socials. Things that come in through my projects go directly back into my projects, and it is always appreciated. As always, please stay safe, be kind to one another, and come aboard again to another This Week in Nickelodeon History.
On the Lord Hut, here we hut, Nick. On the Lord Hut, here we hut, Nick, Nick. On the Ricky Ticky Low, while living #1 Nickelodeon.